You may have heard the term dogs are motivated by food. You may have a dog also that is actually food motivated. One thing that you have to realize and understand that every living thing is food motivated. All creatures, they need food to survive. Without food, nothing can survive. Now the other term that I want you to focus on is your dog eating to live or living to eat? There are creatures and animals that they only live to eat. What that means is their only task and their only purpose of life is to eat so they can live. Cancer cells, for example, that's all they do. They eat to live, to create cancer. There are animals like cows that they live to eat all day long. But there are certain animals also that only eat to live. Prey animals, such as your dog, they eat to live. What that means is they give a very big importance to the food that they eat. Prey animals, they don't eat all the time. They only eat when they get hungry. So what they eat is very important when they eat. So the quality of the food has to be really great when they're eating something, because that food has to provide nutrition, fulfillment, and the animal has to get all the benefits from that food. So your task is to provide your dog the best food so your dog can eat to live. Now, if you really care about this topic and if you really care about your dog, I would highly suggest you to invest 20 minutes of your busy life and watch the following video and try to learn something from this. See if it can make an impact in your life, in the way you think about your dog's diet and food that you're providing to your dog, and if it's going to change your mind. You're going to hear from 4 dog-related professionals who have invested time and effort and energy to learn about dogs' diet. Whether it changes your mind or not, let me know in the comments area, what are you going to do about changing your dog's diet? What would you say are the main benefits of feeding raw food or fresh food?
Oh my goodness, main benefits. So, I think that our dogs really need the food that nature wants them to have. So, what are the main benefits? The benefits is that we actually give them the right fuel. It's like asking what would be the benefits to put gasoline into gasoline car and diesel fuel into diesel car. Well, they don't break down. So I think the benefits is that our dogs don't get sick as often. But it's not the only food is not the only condition for our dogs to be healthy, but it is the essential condition. And when we feed food that is heavily processed, that has ingredients that should not be even there, and also chemicals, and then it sits on the shelf for 6 months, 12 months, maybe 2 years, and then we feed it, it's not really food that nature intended. Some of the foods have grains, which is not great, but also the grain-free diets are still processed and dehydrated and cooked under high temperatures, and the ingredients often are not really the quality that dogs deserve. I have a feeling, or I believe that all animals are entitled to the goodness of the world, and should not be treated any less than human. Some people ask me, what you're feeding human grade meat to your dog? As well, I don't eat meat, so I can feed it to my dog. But who said that we humans are superior to everything else, right? Like, who said that? It's just this kind of idea that we can ravage this planet without any consideration of anything else, and that we are entitled to the best of the world, and no animals are. While we are the worst animal on the planet, right? But also the most beautiful animal on the planet, because we've created beauty and art and different things. But we definitely have this polarity. And when it comes to dogs, they just need it. And you see the transformations. It really is like putting the wrong fuel in your car, in your vehicle. If we feed your dog the wrong food, number one, it's going to get sick more likely. And there may be the odd dog that will live a long life, but it's like the grandma that smokes and lives until 90, right? How often does it happen?
What would you say is a proper diet for dogs? You know, I know this phrase, we call it species appropriate diet. I think it makes sense to me, and I'm explaining that to my viewers and my fans. But I want you to explain, what is a proper diet for dogs?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, because if you ask 20 people, you're going to get 20 different answers. And there is no real right or wrong answer. However, one of the things that I think is a wrong answer is to feed our dogs only highly processed foods with a lot of preservatives in them, made with poor quality ingredients. Think about us. If we, and this is my favorite analogy, if you went to your doctor or the pediatrician for your kids and they said, look, it's holistic, natural, human kibble, 100% real food, 100% balanced, complete, nutritious, with natural ingredients. So if your doctor handed you this and said, pour that in the bowl for yourself or your child every single day and just eat that, would you say you're like a crazy maniac? I'm never coming back here. But yet people walk into the veterinary office and go, oh, okay, I'll dump that in the bowl. You know, if we only ate highly processed food or fast food as the only things that we ever ate, our health would be atrocious. We need to be eating whole foods, real foods, foods that are nutritious and haven't been highly processed. Kibble for our pets has been cooked and processed at high heat 5 times over before it comes out the other end. What the heck is left nutritionally in there? Oh yeah, not much. That's why they add a synthetic vitamin mineral mix. So, okay, great. Here's your dead food, and here's a synthetic vitamin to take with it. Good to go. No, not good to go. It leads to all these chronic degenerative diseases that we see, chronic inflammation in the body, diabetes, arthritis, obesity, heart disease, kidney disease, autoimmune thyroiditis, all these problems that we see in our pets. And it's not just the food. There's a lot of other things that go into that as well that we're doing wrong. Many people are huge fans of raw feeding. I'm a huge fan of raw feeding. All of my dogs are raw fed. That doesn't mean it is the best diet for every dog. Some dogs are so messed up that they absolutely can't process it. Particularly a lot of the really old dogs. Now, I've had dogs live to be 18 and 19 and be raw fed right up till their 19th birthday with no problem. But I do see a lot of dogs that have had chronic inflammatory disease, chronic inflammatory bowel disease. Their guts just are not working. Their microbiome, which is the gut microflora, the bacteria that live in our gut, the good guys, it's so screwed up from so many years of too many antibiotics and, you know, too much suppression and overgrowth of the bad guys. They can't handle the raw food. Their body just doesn't have enough chi or energy to handle it. So for some dogs, the answer is, okay, great. We're going to get really good whole food ingredients, organic if you can afford it and source it. If not, get the cleanest stuff you can. And what I really like is using a slow cooker, because the food is cooked at low heat, and it's basically being pre-digested when we do that. So for some dogs, we literally are making them baby food. We slow cook in the slow cooker, then we run it through a food processor or a blender and break it down so that when it goes to the dog's digestive system, it's just like, oh, thank you. I don't have to work. Life is good. And then once we get the bowel healed, a lot of those animals, then we can move on to being able to feed them raw food. I don't feed anything starchy to my dogs. They don't get peas. They don't get potatoes. They don't get legumes. They don't get grains. They don't get starchy beans. They get a lot of vegetable matter. Well, not a lot, about 20% vegetable matter in their food, but it is for the fiber content and for the vitamins that I'm looking for that it provides.
What would you say to those dog owners who they say, you know, I used to feed my dog for, 20 years, kibble did fine. I'm still feeding my dog kibble, is doing fine. What would you say to them?
You could do better. Yeah, just think about how you would feel if, and actually a lot of people do only eat processed food. I do consultations for people who don't know how to turn on their oven. I had one woman who said, well, I can ask my neighbor. She can probably come over and show me how. And I said, no, I think I'm going to find something, and I call them TV dinners for dogs. I don't know what you have in Canada, but here in America, we've got so many of them now that they're human grade food. They're already prepared. They come in the little trays. Much easier for the small dog owner. For people with big dogs, they're pretty pricey. And why would you not make your own? Because it would be like eating out all the time and having someone else prepare your really nice healthy meal versus preparing it yourself. You definitely pay for that. Yes, dogs certainly can survive on kibble, but they don't necessarily thrive. Kibble is very high in carbohydrates, and you just heard me say that my dogs don't get those starches. The kibble is very high in that because that's a cheap ingredient. And by the way, I took a course to learn how to commercially make dog food, and we had to make canned dog food. We had to design our own diets, and then we had to go make it. And kibble won't stick together if it's got a lot of meat in it. Kibble will never have traditional kibble will never have more than about 28, maybe 30% meat in it, because it won't stick together. It just gums up their machines. It's a big mess. So it's very low meat product, and people look at it and say, well, it says it has 30% protein. Well, if you've got peas in there, peas are very high in protein. And so the meat content might only be 10%. It could be less in that bag. And one of the ways that you can tell, particularly if you're with commercial diets, and I'm not sure if it's exactly the same in Canada, but if something says with in the label, if it says with beef, it only has to have 3%. 3%.
Wow.
And there's other terms. I think dinner or entree, it can have, it has to have like 25%. I can't remember them right off the top of my head. They're in my books. But you have to be a really good label reader. In Europe, they actually label with the percentage of each ingredient in there. They're not allowed to do that here in the US because of lobbying and politics. Well, one of the other problems, to make it palatable, they spray it with fats. So that's why kibble comes in a bag that has sort of a plastic coating on the inside of it. That's to keep fats from going rancid. If you're going to feed kibble, which I don't recommend, but if you're going to feed kibble, you absolutely need to store it in that bag. Do not dump it out into a plastic container. Every time you open that bag or that container, you are exposing those fats to air, which causes oxidation, which makes them go rancid. One of the other problems that we see with kibble-fed dogs is a lot more allergies. I just posted a great study on my website last week about allergies in dogs, and they looked at even dogs who genetically were more prone to having allergies. If the mother was raw fed during pregnancy, and if the puppies were immediately put on raw fed, even the dogs that were genetically predisposed to allergies, only 11% of them developed allergies. Whereas those who were where the mother was kibble fed and the puppies were kibble fed, it was more like 88%.
As a dog trainer who's educated in a little bit of dog nutrition, I go through this frustration of how can you feed your dog kibble? Like they say, oh, I'm buying the most expensive kibble. It's very expensive,
I don't care.
It doesn't really matter, right? Exactly.
It doesn't, because it's any way you cut it, it's going to be higher in carbohydrates, which we have great studies showing that these high carbohydrate diets are highly inflammatory. They lead to obesity. One of the pet food companies very proudly will tell you that they have to put an expiration date on the bag, which is usually 1 to 2 years. But if you call them up and ask them, hey, in a sealed bag, how long is this food good for? They'll tell you proudly 25 years. 25 years.
In your opinion, what is a healthy diet for a dog?
Wow. Well, it's such a great question because, again, our dogs are individuals. So one of the ways what I love to work is a principle of energy testing, because first and foremost, if we keep it simple, I certainly am a really big fan of dogs having a fresh food diet, having raw food. Don't get me wrong, my dog may occasionally have a little bit of milk chocolate or white chocolate, and might have a little bit of ice cream. I will occasionally have a takeaway, so I like to think my body is strong, so that it's going to be depleted when I eat something that's processed, but I don't have it very, very often. Neither do my dogs. Because for me, again, because I see everything as vibration and frequency, when I'm putting something onto my dog's body or into my dog's body, that thing also has a vibration and frequency. So what I want it to do is to support or enhance my dog's vibration and frequency for wellness. So I'm really seeing as what I'm feeding my dog or what I'm putting onto my dog's body is about cellular health. How is this supporting my dog's cells rather than my dog as a physical being? And of course, fresh food, like living bodies need living food, and so fresh food is alive. With our processed food, it's stagnant, it's inert, it's dead. One of the things that I love to do though with my clients and with my own dogs is something called energy testing, because then again, every individual is different. So it might be like, oh well, eating. Someone might say eating 2 apples a day. That's what we should be doing now. We should be eating 2 apples a day because that's going to really promote health. That might be really good for me, but it might not be really good for you. So actually, I don't tend to do it for clients if the dog is generally sound. But if I'm working with clients where we have got digestive upset, we've got skin issues, we've got that the dog is just inflamed emotionally, physically, in whatever way, I'll teach them how to energy test, because it's amazing. And it's really simple, but it's amazing to actually see the fluctuations and variations of when something is suitable for a dog and when something isn't. And that's again, it's stepping away from the whole, oh, everyone should have this amount of vitamin C a day. I'm like, well, that might be right for you, but not right for me. You might need a higher dose or a lower dose than what I need. But if we energy test, then it might be, well, you need 2 milligrams of vitamin C, I need 5 milligrams. It will vary. So I kind of, in some cases, like to get to that level. But for me, I've worked with captive wolves, and the captive wolves I work with, they got raw meat. I mean, they got deer carcass, they got bull calf. They never got processed food, and it never, it never gave it a moment's thought when I got more into the dog industry I was like, why is there such controversy around what we should feed our dogs? It made no sense to me. But really, at a cellular level, the food, even water, we don't really talk about water for our dogs or for ourselves, but everything holds a vibration. It doesn't have to be in us to have an effect, but when it is in us, that's where it's going to have the biggest effect. So it's like, wow, living beings need living food. Living food holds an incredible vibration that supports our cells, and our cells, oh my god, our cells keep us alive. They're little chemical factories that are alive in themselves, or an ecosystem in themselves. So we've got to be feeding ourselves correctly so that they can function correctly. And for me, the way you're going to get that is through your fresh food, is through your raw food, for sure. Lightly cook. I mean, I appreciate some dogs have got so many disturbances going on inside of them that they can't tolerate the raw food, which for me, I'm just like, wow, that's kind of sad. What have we done to our dogs? It's almost like we've created so much selection pressure on some dogs. We've processed dogs, we've literally manufactured them to the point where fresh food is not compatible for them. It just blows my mind that what have we done? But yeah, anything really fresh food. But then if I need to, I really love teaching about energy testing, to just got that extra level of what is compatible for one dog is not necessarily compatible for the other.
But in a nutshell, there is nothing good about kibble. There is no way your dog can thrive and live a happy, long, healthy life by eating kibble his whole life. It's impossible. That's my feelings. Yeah. Now, does diet affect their grooming, their overall health? Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that there's so much sugar in kibble, and kibble is what 98% of people feed their animals. And the diabetes rate is high in canines and cats. The obesity is way up.
Right.
The skin and coat, it all gets, the problems that they have with skin and coat, it all kind of gets thrown in this little bubble of skin allergies. But really, there's other underlying, it takes a while for stuff to surface through the skin. When we do see problems on the skin of our dogs, It may have been buried down in there for a while and it's finally come out through the skin. That doesn't mean the skin is the first problem. People often think, oh, it's an allergy. We treat the skin or whatever, but it really is just an imbalance of an unhealthy dog. And I feel that diet has everything to do with your dog's gum, teeth health, ears, their lifespan, their coat, whether it's a healthy coat, obviously skin. Yes, diet affects all that, as well as you probably know it can affect behavior too.